G'day, and welcome to AOS Coach. In this video, I'm going to look at dice roll modifiers in 3rd edition Age of Sigmar and unpack how they work. You're probably already aware that we roll dice during the game to determine the outcomes of our units and how they interact with our opponents. There'll be plenty of times where you or your opponent may influence the dice roll to be positive or negatively modified. Gloomspite Git Netters, for example, cause a -1 to hit. Your wizards can cast Mystic Shield on a unit to gain +1 to their save roll. And Frostheart Phoenix can cause a -1 penalty to their wound rolls. So there's a lot of different modifiers out there in the game. This is just an example. You'll see in the core rules in 1.55, it talks about modifiers and rerolls. And I want to point you towards an important side note. In most cases, modifiers are accumulative. However, some dice rolls, such as to hit or wound rolls, will specify that the roll cannot be modified more than a +1 or a -1. When in this case, add up all the modifiers that apply, and if the total is more than +1 or -1, treat it as being a +1 or a -1. So let's unpack this in a second, but what are some of those universal modifiers available to almost everyone? Mystic Shield can cause a +1 to save. Cover can give you +1 to save. If you're shooting at a hero, it can cause a -1 to hit using Lookout Sir if that hero is under 10 wounds and within 3 inches of an enemy unit. You've got the Damned Terrain that can give you +1 to hit. The Finest Hour gives you +1 to save. Unleash Hell, which is a command ability, will allow you to shoot as a charge reaction, but you will be -1 to hit. All out attack +1 to hit, all out defense +1 to save. Lots of different ways in the shooting, combat, command ability, heroic actions, terrain, artifacts, you name it. There are ways to go up or down with modifiers. So there are some limitations, as we've already spoken about, that talk about positive or negative modifiers to dice rolls. And we've already just seen that the hit and the wound roll can't be modified higher than a +1 or a -1 total. I'll explain that in a second. However, in addition to all of that, section 13.3 talks in the core rules about limitations to your save roll. So in addition to the +1, -1 ability to your hit and wound roll, a save roll can be only modified with a +1, but there is no limit to the way that you negatively impact a save roll. So Rend is a perfect example where you might be able to apply a negative to a save roll. So Rend -2, Rend -3, Rend -5 still counts, but I can only ever put up to a +1 total. Again, I'll explain that second. Now, your other dice rolls, things like movement, spell casting, run, damage, there's a lot of other different dice rolls. They do not have, at the point of recording, they have no limit to the positive or the negative modifiers to the dice roll. So you can cause a -3 to run, you could cause a +7 to cast. These things are in the game, maybe not +7, but there are ways to increase your casting or your damage or reduce damage. As we talked earlier, when we are talking about the total, we are talking about the combination of both positive and negative modifiers are being applied in the same interaction. Now, I recognize for some people this sounds confusing, so I'm going to look at some examples and try to break it down for you a little bit. So let's look at an example of how this all comes together. I'm in control of a unit of Free Guild Greatswords, and they have 2 attacks each, and on their war scroll, they hit on 3s. Now, I'm not talking about any other modifiers, any other ways to influence the dice roll. It's purely the war scroll, they hit on 3s. And it's in combat with a unit of Gloomspite Git Netters. Now, normally I would use the war scroll profile, which is hitting on 3s for this unit. However, the Stabbers have this special model in its unit called a Netter, and the Netter causes a -1 penalty to units within a certain range. Without any of the positive or negative modifiers, this greatsword is going to hit on 3s. Now, because it's within range of the Netter, it's hitting on 4s. But when you look at the war scroll of the Free Guild Greatswords, they have this ability called the Oath-Sworn Honor Guard, and it allows you to get a +1 to hit roll if it is within range of a Free Guild hero. And once I've measured the distance between my Free Guild hero and my Greatsword unit, I realized that it's actually in range and it's eligible for this +1 to hit. So the -1 to hit penalty from the net is countered by the +1 to hit from the Oath-Sworn ability. So I've gone from a war scroll of hitting on a 3 a negative -1 from the netter, so it's down to 4s. Now I'm back to 3s because of that +1 from the Oathsworn. Now, if I was to then use a command ability like, let's say, All Out Attack also gives me a +1 to hit. So I can actually reduce the dice roll to now hitting on 2s after I apply the total positive and negative modifiers. Remember, I can only ever have a +1 or -1 to hit or wound rolls. So that's the largest modifier. I could have +7 through various command abilities and unit sizes, and there's a whole range to get pluses to hit, but I can only ever finish off with a +1 or a -1 on the hit and wound rolls. I hope you're still with me. So let's say that the Free Guild Greatswords have finished off the unit of Gloomspite Netters, and they're now in combat with a Mangler Squig. And I mentioned the hit and wound roll can only be modified to a plus or a -1 after the totals have been combined. And I did mention earlier on that the save rolls aren't quite the same. Now, let's look at how the save would work versus what's called rend. A rend is a negative modifier to your save. So this same Free Guild unit has a armor save of 4+. So when I make a dice roll and I make an armor save with no modifiers, I'm looking for a 4+ here. And there are some ways that I can improve my save roll. Things like my wizard casting Mystic Shield on this unit. I could use All Out Defense. Remember, a unit can only receive or issue one command, so I wouldn't be able to get All Out Defense and All Out Attack. I'd have to make a choice here, but there are different ways that I can get pluses to my armor save. Now, if they were still in combat with the stabbers, the guys with the nets, they don't have any rend on their attacks. So when I roll a dice roll for the armor save of a greatsword, I'm looking for its base profile. And in this example, we are looking at a 4+. But the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig has a bunch of different attacks. It has some Rend 0, Rend 1, Rend 2. Rend is a negative modifier. So if we were to look at the Mangler Squig's attack, and let's say we're making a dice save roll for its attack sequence for the ball and chain. And when we look at the War Scroll, the ball and chain attack is Rend -2. Now, if the Greatsword unit didn't have any positive modifiers and I was rolling a save roll for those ball and chain attacks, my armor save has gone from a 4+ to a 6+ because the ball and chain attack is Rend -2. Now, at 6+ armor save, the Greatswords will die to a stiff breeze. So there's going to be ways that I need to try to keep this unit alive. You know, retrospectively, I could have cast Mystic Shield from a wizard to get +1 to its save. If I had that unit champion or a hero, I could potentially activate All Out Defense for a +1 armor save. If I was sitting on terrain gaining cover, I could get +1 to save. If I had 2 +1 to save, that would cancel out the rend. If I only had one of them, so if I had a +1 to my armor save, but I'm being impacted by a -2 to my armor save from the ball and chains from the Mangler Squig, my armor save would go from a 4 to a 5 because I'm having a -2 to my armor save, but only getting a +1 to my save. So there's a negative of a -1 to my modifier here. Again, you know, if I was fighting with my great swords against stabbers, they have no rend. And if I had both Mystic Shield and All Out Defense, I would get +2 to my armor save, but remember the rule, we can only have a maximum of a +1 to my armor save. So against the rend, the +2, the +3 to the armor save will help me reduce the damage of rend, but if there is little to no rend, then the benefits are only limited. I can only really ever get a +1 to the total armor save. I hope you're still with me here, and I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, you might want to go back to some of the examples. So let's recap on what I just went through. The largest positive modifier that you can gain on a hit or a wound or a save roll is +1. The largest overall negative modifier to your opponent is going to be a -1 to hit or -1 to wound. If your weapon has a rend characteristic of rend -1, rend -2, rend -3, you can go higher than -1 to an armor save roll, but only on an armor save roll. And if you remember very, very early on, you can also have positive and negative modifiers on other things like damage, spell casting, run, movement, you know, a whole range of different things. you can still get a +2 or a -2. So there is value in getting a +2 or a -2 to hit or wound or save. But just know that if your opponent doesn't have a set of modifiers, let's say there is no Goblin Netter to cause -1 to hit, then maybe I don't need to go for using all-out attack because I've got a +1 to hit already. So to summarize all of this, and I hope I haven't lost you in this video, once you have added up all of the positive and negative modifiers involved in the interaction, remember the Mangler Squig versus the Great Swords, the Stabbers versus the Great Swords, when you've combined both the positive and negative modifiers, the total is only a +1 or a -1 when we're dealing with hit roll or to wound roll. We can only get a +1 to our armor save, but we can get many negative modifiers on our save roll. If you have an ability to get you +2 or a -2 to the hit, the wound, or the save roll, it is still going to hold value, but it mostly holds its value to help you counterbalance any of the modifiers that your opponent might throw at you. So in most cases, as I mentioned, the modifiers are accumulative. However, +1 or -1 is really the maximum you're going to get. So don't overstack or overcommit on one unit, really trying to reduce its attack sequence. Again, you can get +2 or +3, but you would to really reap the rewards of using all those abilities, you would need your opponent to have a negative modifier. Otherwise, you're better off only having a +1 to hit and spreading out across your other parts of your army. Maybe all-out attack needs to go somewhere else. Maybe the command ability needs to be issued on a different unit that could gain the +1 as opposed to pooling all your resources on one unit. I hope this helped. I've tried to explain the negative and positive modifiers as best as possible, and I hope that clears up any confusion that might be out there. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so link is down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.